All right, for all of you front of house engineers and monitor engineers out there, this one's for you guys. Today's episode is sponsored by the Two-Hand Touch by giggear.com. It's an efficient and ergonomic solution that eliminates all of the problems of having to hold an iPad or tablet while you're working by putting it right where production pros need it to be, directly in front of them. And right now we've got a special offer running with Gig Gear. If you head over to their website, that's gig-gear.com. Use the code ROADIE when you check out. You'll get 15% off your entire order. Now listen, that's gig-gear.com. Use that code ROADIE. Get yourself 15% off your entire order right now.
What's up, roadies? This is Steve Walsh.
This is Joel Anke.
What's happening, roadies? This is Ken POOCH VAN DRUTEN, and you're listening to Roadie Free Radio.
What's up, roadies? My name is Larry Milburn, and this is Roadie Free Radio, your VIP pass to meet and greet the stars behind the scenes of the music and film business. All right. What's happening, roadies? Welcome to episode 92. Ken POOCH VAN DRUTEN is today's guest. Happy post-Easter. It is cold in the barn because we've got yet another random snowstorm that has blown in here. How are you guys doing? What's going on, man? Today we got Ken POOCH VAN DRUTEN on the show. Hell of a guy. We'll get to him in just a moment. How are you? How was your Easter Passover weekend? Did you guys have a good celebration? I hope you did. I was busy. And to be honest, I'm cranking this episode out on Monday after all the festivities. April 2nd, I'm doing this because I was in Boston last week, as I mentioned, and for a shoot, helping some buddies out. And I thought I was going to have time to work on the episode up there. Did not have any time, any free time, which was a good thing because, quite frankly, we had a great shoot and worked with some guys I hadn't had a chance to work with in a while. And everyone got along. It was good. It was fun. Good client. You know what? You couldn't ask for anything better, as a matter of fact. So that was great, but I didn't have a chance to work on the episode. And then I came right back and jumped into dad mode. And so no chance over the weekend. Today is my first time to actually sit down and work on the episode. And that's groovy. So it's coming out a little bit late. Sometimes I like to get these out Sunday night. What are you going to do? Listen, if you're joining us for the first time, we welcome you. We thank you for stopping by here at Roadie Free Radio. We talk to people behind the scenes of the music industry. I like to focus on the folks out on the road doing what they do. But, I love a good story. As the people here can tell you in this community, I love a good story. I can't shy away from too many folks. So we get a good mix here on the show. Also want to let you guys know, if you haven't had a chance to head over to the YouTube channel, just look up Roadie Free Radio. You'll find us on YouTube. Just hit 107 subscribers. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but you got to celebrate every milestone. We cracked 100 about 4 or 5 days ago, and then got up to 107, mostly in part to the Peter Shapiro interview that I did a couple of weeks back. Those folks tweeted it, posted about it, and it kind of helped blow that thing up. So thank you, everybody who's been checking it out. Again, if you haven't headed over to the website or to the YouTube channel, please go ahead and do so. And as always, head over to the website because I post a lot of stuff up there, news and whatnot. And then in each person's episode, if you're only listening on SoundCloud, you don't really see this, but in each person's episode on the website, I put a special mentions section, which contains stuff from the last few weeks, some links for albums and whatnot, and websites you can go check some things out. So head over there if you haven't done so. Have a look. Also, don't forget, the All Guitar Network is getting ready to launch in the next few weeks, very soon. So while you can, head over and sign up now. We're going to be doing some content for those guys. I'm very excited about that. AllGuitarNetwork.com, John 5, Joe Bonamassa, Norman Harris from Norman's Rare Guitars, Richie Sambora is involved, and of course, yours truly will be doing some very cool things. Speaking of very cool things, I got a couple of episodes coming up I got to tell you about. This week, I'm going to be talking to Carly Scoville, Robert Scoville's daughter, trying to get some of the youngins on the show. You know what I mean? Carly Scoville is going to be on the show. She spent her last summer on the Tom Petty 40th anniversary tour, one of her big ones, doing wardrobe assistant stuff. And I thought it'd be a cool perspective to have, father-daughter here talk about their time on the road. So she's coming up. I'm heading into Brooklyn this week to talk to bass player extraordinaire Byron Isaacs, who is currently with the Lumineers. He's been with Amy Helm, the Weight Band, Jim Weeder, tons of people. Great, great guy. He's got an incredible P bass from the mid-'60s. So we're going to dissect that thing, and we're going to shoot a little video for the All Guitar Network. So I got those guys coming up. And I got a few other little special things. And don't forget, episode 100 will be dropping on Memorial Day. All right? That's about all the news that I have for you guys. I hope you're well. And let's get on down to business here with Mr. Van Druthen. Ken Pooch, good guy. Met Ken here at the NAMM show. Was introduced by the folks over at Telefunken. Dragged Ken over to me, and he agreed to do the show. I'm glad he did. He is a Berklee College of Music graduate, Magna Cum Laude. He graduated, got a Bachelor in Arts in Music Production and Engineering. The guy has been voted Front of House Engineer of the Year 8 times. 8 times by Tourlink Top Dog Awards. Guy's got 2 Parnelli Awards. Dose. And a lot of other awards to follow. His resume is pretty ridiculous. I don't usually post people's resumes on the website, so I'm gonna rip through these. I do it in the interview too, but let me just give you a couple of top ones. Here we go. Jay-Z, Travis Scott, Prophets of Rage, Justin Bieber, Katy Perry, Linkin Park, Stone Temple Pilots, Alice in Chains, Motley Crue, Jane's Addiction, Smashing Pumpkins, Slash, Korn, System of a Down, Lisa Marie Presley, Limp Bizkit, Seal, Beastie Boys, Guns N' Roses, Kid Rock. We got Courtney Love, Eminem, Pantera, Slayer, Black Sabbath, Rob Zombie, Ozzy Osbourne. I mean, the guy's been around, man. Kiss, Joe Walsh. Great dude. We had a fun chat. And, good times all around. All right. So listen, that's it for me. I'm going to get out of the way, get this interview started. Thank you, guys. Please hit me up if you have any questions, or you got a question for a particular guest coming up, or just you want me to, change up some things on the show. I always want to hear from you. That's info@roadiefreeradio.com. All right. Are you ready? Here he is, the master himself, Mr. Ken Pooch Van Druthen.
Hit it. Call yourself a roadie. Call yourself a roadie. Call yourself a roadie.
How was the Alanis tour? You just got back from that.
Yeah, we have a little break. We're doing. She does 2 things. She does an acoustic kind of thing, and that's what we're just doing. And then she also does a full band deal, and we're about to do rehearsals for a full band thing that's in Mexico. So
how long is the Mexico run?
Just one show for me. She is continuing on, but I'm leaving her to go do my other gig, which is Iron Maiden.
Right. How long have you been with those guys?
About 4 months.
So it's relatively new.
Very new. Yeah.
Are you excited?
I am. Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
You're kind of the hard rock guy.
I've been lucky because I've been walking this weird line between pop and hard rock. I kind of my very first really big break was Whitney Houston, and so I was doing pop, kind of from the beginning. And then, I don't know, I got pigeonholed into rock for a while. Another huge act that I did was Kiss. And that kind of, once you do Kiss, then you kind of got spelled off into doing rock.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's cool. I'm blessed.
Yeah. Well, your resume speaks to a lot of different things that I want to get to. And you're right, because you got Whitney Houston. It all started as being a monitor engineer, yeah?
That's right.
So you got Whitney, and then you bounce to Everlast and Maxwell, and then all of a sudden you hit Rob Zombie, which leads you to Ozzy, Black Sabbath, Slayer, Pantera, Eminem,
Yes.
and then Courtney Love.
Yeah.
Which is all sort of within the same thing until you get to M, and then but he's still rocking, obviously. Yeah. But then you got Earth, Wind, and Fire on there.
Yeah. It's funny, I mean, I had a mentor. His name was ML ProSize, and he was an excellent mixer. And he worked for Shoko and then worked for Claire Brothers. And I was kind of like his Swiss Army knife. Like if he knew there was going to be an issue, with an artist, or it was a hard artist or whatever, he would call me. And so it really didn't matter like what style of music it was. There were 3 of us engineers, another guy named Toby Francis and another guy named Pilge Chappelle. And Bill and Toby and I were kind of like his go-to guys for a long time. And I got most of all the people that you just described, off of my resume mostly came from him. And so it's all his fault. He's no longer with us on the planet, but I'm sure he's looking down and laughing.
You mentioned something in there briefly about maybe so much it didn't matter about the mixing, but it was dealing with particular clients, and that's why you got those gigs. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I always tell people like, the mixing part of this and being a good mixer is important, but it's really about your people skills, and the ability to, the secret to my success, I think, is being able to walk into a room full of crazy people and having a discussion with them that they can identify with. I don't identify with, let's say Justin Bieber, right? Like if I walk into a room with Justin Bieber and, do you think that Justin Bieber goes to Starbucks by himself? Like probably not. When he wants a coffee, he turns to somebody and says, go get me a coffee and whatever. So my life is not like that.
Right.
But somehow I'm able to walk into that room and be able to understand or grasp what his life is like and be able to have a conversation with him about that.
So, all right. So let's do this. Let's take away, again, looking at the resume. Okay. Let's just take away. We'll give you the Bachelor of Arts in Music Production from Berklee. I'll give you that one. Yep. All right. But let's take away the fact that you graduated Magna Cum Laude. Let's take away the fact you've been voted front of house engineer 8 times by Tourlink Top Dog Awards. You got 2 Parnelli Awards, and on and on and on, right? If we're just looking at the names on your resume, let's just give those for people who can't see this. We'll start at the top. Jay-Z, Travis Scott, Prophets of Rage, Bieber, Katy Perry, Linkin Park. You did a long stint with Linkin Park, Stone Temple Pilots, Alice in Chains, Motley Crue, James, right? I mean, Whitney, right? If you're just a dude, if you're just you standing at a board, what the fuck is between your ears, Ken, that makes you different from everybody else?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, a lot of it is, listen, I really enjoy everything that I learned. I didn't make any of it up. Like I learned it from somebody by watching somebody else, whether how not to do something or how to do something. I learned that by watching somebody else. So I believe it's my responsibility as I'm a little bit older now to pass my knowledge on to others. Right. But the problem I come to is when I'm teaching, a class at Berklee or wherever, I can teach people skills, but there is something inherent, just like Steve Vai is an amazing guitar player, and he is completely different than all other guitar players on the planet. It's not because he rehearsed so much or that he was born with something that is just part of him. So a lot of what I attribute to my success is really honestly God-given stuff that I had nothing to do with, and I'm lucky in that regard. I'm aware of how blessed I am for that. But I think honestly, it's not about having golden ears. I think that I was born with average ears, and what I mean by that is ears that are kind of right down the middle of what everybody's hearing is, right? So if you look at someone's hearing on the extreme, right, and the extreme left, whatever that may mean, but somebody that likes it high-endy, somebody that likes it low-endy, whatever.
Yep.
I happen to have ears that are kind of right down the middle of what everybody's hearing is, and so that I make mixed decisions based on an average listener. And so I think people think that my work is good because of that. I don't think it's because I have this amazing pair of ears or whatever it is. But I definitely acknowledge that, that I put myself in some of these situations, and I have worked hard to do the work that I've done. But some of this is not my doing.
It comes from a higher place.
Yeah, right. For sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, all right. So just to drive it home a little bit more, and then I'll let you go on this piece. So if I'm looking at 3 or 4 different resumes, I'm going to go out on tour finally, right? And I got 3 or 4 resumes, and yours is one of them.
Yep.
Why is yours standing out to me? Why am I going to pick yours? I know because of the accolades, but you know what I mean? What sets you apart also?
Experience. I mean, if you look at my resume, it goes back in years. And so.
But you're a pretty young guy, man. I mean, Whitney Houston, 96. You must have been relatively right out of school, right?
No, I was. Yeah. I graduated from Berklee in 91. I was a young kid.
That was still pretty good Whitney.
Yeah. I mean, so my story is that I graduated from Berklee and I had no intention of being a live sound engineer. I was going to be a producer engineer. When I first started going to Berklee, I went to a local studio there called Newberry Sound and begged to empty the garbage. And basically over the course of the 4 years that I went to Berklee, I went from being the guy emptying garbage to being their chief engineer at Newberry Sound. And at Newberry Sound, I ended up doing some projects that came out to be pretty good records. And so when I graduated from Berklee, I'm like, okay, I'm going to Los Angeles. I'm going to be a recording engineer and a producer. And so I was able to do that for, the first couple of years, 92, 93, 94, 95, was all engineering in local studios in Los Angeles.
Wow.
But I had never mixed a live show, even in all of my experience. I'd never mixed a live show until I moved to Los Angeles and I was working for a heavy metal band called Warrant.
Sure.
And I was doing demos for them at the studio, and their lead singer said, "Hey, why don't you come mix a live show?" And I said, "Well, I've never mixed a live show. I haven't even, I was a musician, so I played in bars, but I'd never mixed a bar or anything,
Right.
And literally, I found myself like the next day mixing a giant show for them, and as a front of house guy, and was like, whoa, this is trippy. And
what was the venue?
It was the Forum in LA. Actually, they were opening up for Rat.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So I went from being a studio guy to, sitting there as a front of house guy in front of 10,000 people going, what is going on? And I fell in love with the instant gratification that happens, in live stuff, and kind of never really looked back. I was like, you got to look at the time period. This is a time period when it was, it wasn't Pro Tools. It was all tape. So sometimes we would spend 2 days on a guitar solo, punching the same 4 bars. And so I even though I was just starting out as a producer and engineer, I was kind of disheartened with that, being stuck in a room with no windows, working 16-hour days, 7 days a week. And I saw this as an opportunity to be like, hey, I can go see the world, So anyway, long story short, that was how I ended up doing live stuff. So I had a base experience of being a recording engineer and a producer, and that's what led me into doing what I do.
Was it hard? Obviously, sort of soul-wise, spiritually for you, it wasn't hard to make the leap, but did you find it hard to all of a sudden try to sort of break into the live thing? Or was it like, I just mixed the forums, so I'm ready to go? Give me a shot.
No, it was absolutely 100% foreign to me. I mean, just recently, equipment has come to the place where, speaker systems are kind of now every seat in the house is a record quality mix. When I first started, we were high-fiving when you could hear the vocal, right? We're like, woo, you heard the vocal. It was great.
Yeah.
It was amazing, and so it was completely foreign to me, and I had to learn very quickly. But luckily, after doing the Warrant thing for a while, then I went to being, I was the tech for Whitney Houston, the monitor tech, and setting up kinds of stuff. And then that monitor engineer left, and so that's how I got the gig. I stepped up, and all of a sudden, so I'm coming from a recording engineer to being a monitor engineer, which is completely foreign. Like, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah.
And so I think it was what was fun about my whole path was that, like, every day I was like, well, someone would say, hey, you know how to do that, right? And I'd say, totally lying my ass off. I'd say, yeah, hell yeah, I know how to do that. And meanwhile, just terrified and like trying to figure shit out as I did it,
Well, again, it's not like you're bouncing into a band that's in a van on the road, right? You're starting right out with Whitney, who again, 96, 98, she's still Whitney.
Oh yeah.
Right. So
yeah, she was.
So yeah, you're learning at a pretty high level pretty quickly. Who's the monitor engineer that was showing you the way?
I'm really blanking on his name. His first name is Harry, and I can't remember his last name. Man. But I mean, literally I watched that guy do it for, 2 years, and then pretty much stepped into it, after watching someone doing it. Again, saying I didn't make any of this shit up. I watched someone do it and went, okay, I'm going to do what he did because that worked,
The piece of being a monitor engineer is different from front of house because you're right up there with them.
Yes.
Was that the part to you that was exciting? And also, I got to imagine there is some overlap from the studio world because with musicians in a studio, you're right there. It's visceral and it's now, right?
Yeah, it's funny. It shaped my career as to I don't want to be a monitor engineer. I discovered on that gig and some other gigs as a monitor engineer that it's too close to the musicians. I'd much rather be in front of house. So I know how to do it.
They can't throw shit at you that far, right?
Yeah, totally. I much prefer dealing with the politics of everything else at front of house than the up close personal bit.
The abuse of being a monitor engineer. Come on, you can say it.
Some are worse than others for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, man. What studios were you working in LA around that time, 92?
I worked at Paramount Recording Studios, Hollywood and Vine. Mm-hmm. I was, cheapest kid in the house. They had 3 studios there. It was right when rap was coming out. So Ice Cube worked there like all the time. And the studio owner this guy named Adam would have to literally like look at the booking board of the 6 studios that were there and make sure that he wasn't booking the Bloods into Studio A and the Crips into Studio B, because if they met in the hallway, there was going to be a gunfight. I mean, that was the time period. It was right, right during all that kind of shit. So I worked there for a while. I also worked at a studio called Ocean, not Ocean Way, but Ocean in Burbank. That is a really well-known studio that worked there for a while. So,
did you like it out there at that time?
I did. I got, the whole hip hop thing. I got a little frustrated with all that. I was working at Paramount. There were guys coming in with literally no music, and they would come in with maybe like a yellow notepad of a bunch of like ideas. And I was the one that was creating the music for them. I was a musician. So I would get in front of an MPC 60 and make beats for them and make a song. I basically made the song for them. They would then, go out there and do the rap thing over the top of it, and they would make millions, and I was making, $15 an hour. So I got frustrating after a while. I did a bunch of records that got big. They were huge, that literally I wasn't getting paid for. But nothing. So that part of it wasn't that much fun, but I was doing my own kind of producing projects on the side that I, was getting to work with some amazing musicians, and that was keeping me going. Yeah.
Who were some of the producers that you worked with or got to work with or watch that you learned some stuff with? Do you remember?
Yeah, Bruce Swedien. I watched him a lot. Jack Joseph Puig, I assisted him. Some really heavy hitter dudes. Chris Lord-Alge, Tom Lord-Alge. Guys came through Ocean all the time. That were really, big heavy hitter dudes, and I was their assistant engineer or whatever. Yeah. I got to see a lot of guys work. I was really lucky.
Nice. All right, so let's go back, man. Where are you from originally?
Lafayette, California. Northern California is where I grew up.
Lafayette. And then right outside of, right on the sort of east of San Francisco there, right?
That's right. Yeah, East Bay, Walnut Creek, Concord area.
Yeah, that's a cute little town.
It is.
I've been there. Yeah. I stayed in another town near there. I can't remember it. But yeah, I was up there for a documentary I helped co-produce on my late cousin Michael Bloomfield.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and we did interviews up at a studio in Sebastopol with Nick Gravenitis. Yeah, and I stayed there. I can't remember the name of this little town, but anyway, we went to the farmers market in Lafayette.
Oh, okay.
Cool there. So you're from there. Cool. What'd your family do?
My father was a chief of surgery at San Francisco Kaiser. And my mother was a child psychologist.
Wow.
Grew up upper middle class, going
to shows?
Going to shows. So I was a shit teenager. I really, I got kicked out of my high school for selling drugs, and progressed through basically, the bad kids school, and then got kicked out of there. So then went to private school, got kicked out of there. Finally ended up going to boarding schools, and I ended up going to 2 different boarding schools. One was Feather River Preparatory School, and the other one was the Elliot Pope Preparatory School. And both of those were kind of music, kind of like Fame. Remember that show, Fame?
Oh yeah, totally.
So they were performance arts based boarding schools, and I went from being a shit kid selling drugs to getting A's in school, but basically because I needed to be in a performance arts kind of place.
This is all making sense now. This is no wonder you can walk into a room with some of these artists and you go, Justin, I was you, babe. I got it. I got it, man. Right?
No, there's definitely a lot of things I can identify with people. Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. All right, so you kind of turn it around at boarding school a little bit, or you latch into something that makes you want to stick around. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I go, like I said, I went from being an F student and cutting every day from school to going to every single class and being an A. I was a A student.
Yeah.
But, only I think it honestly is that I needed to get away from my parents, and I needed to, I was ready to delve into being a musician, way before my time. So being stuck in your regular curriculum of, going to algebra class was not for me. What
was your instrument, and when did you start?
I was, again, the Swiss Army of instruments. So I started with classical piano when I was 3 years old. I studied pretty intensely piano all the way till I was about 11. When I was 11, I started playing woodwinds. I played flute, and I studied under the first chair of the San Francisco Symphony Orchestra, a flute player. She was amazing. Then I hit puberty, and I realized I wasn't going to get laid by playing the flute, and picked up all the other instruments like guitar and bass and drums. And I had a really awesome middle school teacher who did jazz band and regular band and all kinds of stuff, and he was very encouraging. For me, he's one of those guys that okay, so the drummer, the kid that used to play drums moved away. He's like, so Ken, why don't you play drums? And I was like, okay,
sure,
and then I learned how to play drums, and then I was a drummer in the jazz band, So I played all kinds of instruments, but I landed on electric bass when I went to Berklee College of Music. That was my instrument. Electric bass.
That was your focus at Berklee.
It was, yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Why particularly did you choose Berklee?
So I'm going to that performance arts boarding school. A friend of mine was also a musician. We played in a band together at that school. He says to me, man, I applied for Berklee College of Music. I'm going to go to this Berklee College of Music. I'm going to be, a musician. I'm going to do all this, whatever. And I was like, yeah, whatever, man. Cool. I hope that works out for you, And then 2 days later, I meet with the college counselor, and she's like, well, you have to apply for some college, and I'm like, all right, well, I heard about this Berklee place. I'll apply to that, whatever.
Yeah.
Didn't even think about it. So then months later, the letters come on the same day. My buddy gets his letter, and I get my letter, and he gets denied, and I get accepted. And it was the weirdest. It was weird. It was here's this dude that really wants it.
Yeah.
And here I am yeah, okay, whatever. And I ended up getting a scholarship.
Jesus.
Yeah. Because I turned in, I was in a band that won a battle of the bands, and the part of that winning that battle of the bands was a weekend in the studio in Los Angeles. So I was 17 and at Larrabee and watching the engineer work. And that was kind of really where I caught the bug for engineering. I was like, I want to do what that guy's doing.
Yeah.
That project got me a scholarship at Berklee, that little weekend thing. So anyway, yeah, long story short, my buddy ended up selling insurance, and I ended up being a musician.
I bet he loves you, right?
I'm sure there's some animosity in his life towards me. Wasn't my fault. I didn't, it's not like I took his, right. I didn't take his spot.
Right, exactly.
There's spots. I just got in and he didn't. I don't know why.
All's fair in love and war, buddy.
Oh, man.
So I got to imagine, though, that little turning point, getting you 3,000 miles away, was a good thing with you and your folks, right?
Yes and no. My father, being a doctor, surgeon, really wanted me to do that. All right. So
You an only child?
my family.
Only
Yeah,
child?
I am an only child.
Yeah.
I was adopted.
Okay.
My family is like, everybody in the family. It's like 13 MDs that are, my cousins, my nephews, everybody in my family is an MD. So my father expected me to be that. And it was a lot of the animosity between us, me growing up, was that I was like, no, that's not what I'm going to be. I'm going to be a musician.
Yeah.
I think they encouraged me, and they were happy that I went to college, any college, but weren't so thrilled about me going to music college, probably. So, I had to, listen, I was raised upper middle class and had a lot of things given to me. But my parents, in the right way, I think, were like, all right, you want to go to music college? Well, you got to pay for, you got a scholarship for the actual college, but you're going to have to pay for your apartment and pay for your stuff and whatever. We're not paying, we'll help you if you absolutely need some help, which they did a few times.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I was working 2 jobs. I was working at that studio, and then I was also parking cars. I was a valet parking guy. All through college. So I was working 2 jobs. I was going to school, 10 hours a day and making it through college like everybody does.
Nice. And how was the Berklee experience for you?
It was great. Because I tell people this all the time. It's as great as you make it out to be. You could go through Berklee and kind of just cruise through and be a pretty average musician. And, they have proficiencies that you have to pass. So at some level, you're a pretty good musician going through Berklee. But on average, you're just kind of just another guy.
Yeah.
Well, as I was going through it, I looked around and was like, holy crap, there's 20 bass players that are better than I am. I gotta be the best at what I do. And so, when it came to studio time and, cause I did the major of, music production and engineering, but also, was bass player. The first 2 years is intensive study of your instrument. The second 2 years is whatever major you choose, which is music production and engineering. So I begged, borrowed, and stole, studio time. When nobody else wanted it, I was in the studio complex at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
Trying to hone my craft, wanting to be the best at what I could do. And so, was my Berklee experience great? Yes. And it was great because I was borrowing, and stealing every moment of it. The guys that just go there, they purge out music production and engineering department at Berklee, floods the industry with 300 people every year.
Wow.
Right? Think about that. Where are those people going to find jobs? Sure. I don't know.
Right.
So that means that you have to be, you have to be better than the rest of them if you want to, end up getting work.
Right. Which clearly, coming out Magna Cum Laude, you pulled it off.
Yeah, and I won a tech award there, which was pretty cool. Yeah, but only because I was I was very aware. I looked around and went, holy shit, there's a lot of really good people here. Yeah. And they're good at their gig, and I better get good at it, or I'm not gonna survive.
Was there also that point of well, it is, I guess you said it, the point of yeah, I'm not the best bass player here, so I better find something. I mean, I imagine if you're going there just to be a musician as well, you're thinking, 100%. Holy shit, man, there's 8,000 musicians, whatever, every year, and bands that don't make it. I mean, for every, Jane's Addiction or Smashing Pumpkins on your list, or Justin Bieber, there's scores that you never hear from, or you've heard from once, and then that's it.
100%. I knew there was this weird period at Berklee where I knew I just knew that I wasn't gonna make it as a bass player. Like I knew I'm a good bass player. I still am. I'm a good bass player, but I'm not a fantastic bass player.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And even fantastic bass players are having trouble finding work.
Right.
You know? So there was a minute where I looked around and went, this bass thing isn't going to work out for me. Let's try something where there's more opportunity, which might be a tech job, you know, like being an engineer, whatever.
Right.
It was, you know, 91 was right when, like, you know, Macintosh SEs were just coming out.
Yep.
And I was discovering computers, you know, and I was like, wow, this is cool. I can, you know, merge these kind of two things that I love, musicianship and working with computers and technology. And I don't know, it clicked. I just figured out that was the thing I wanted to do.
That's awesome, man. So when you were in school and you got bitten by the engineering bug and producing bug and whatnot, what were some of the albums, do you remember, that you were like, you know, sort of for you that were like, oh man, if I could get there, or that sound is my thing, you know? What were you drawn to?
Yeah. I mean, the albums of that period that were, you know, I was always drawn to, it's weird because even as a musician, I wasn't drawn to amazing playing per se. I was drawn to amazing sounding records.
Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah. So, like I was a big fan of like Seal at the time.
Yeah.
You know, Bob Ezrin, you know, all of the shit that he did. I loved anything that like Trevor Horn did, you know, stuff. I was really into anything that like Bruce Fairbairn did. Like he did records with a band called Dan Reed Network. Okay. They're a band from Portland. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's weird. I was like I was a producer groupie, you know, more than I was a musician groupie, you know. So you know, I was listening to records, you know, by Sting. I don't know. I'm trying to think of who else, but just, you know, I was turned on. I would spend days in the Tower Records on the corner of whatever that is, Mass Ave and whatever. There's a Tower Records is right down the street from Berklee College of Music. Yeah. And it was a, you know, 5-story record store. And I would spend, you know, Saturday and Sunday in the place just listening, looking for amazing sounding records. That was what I loved. Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, I think the study of those records is a lot of what I like. My stuff sounds like that now because that's what I listened to when I was then. Yep. Yeah, I don't know. There's some amazing records. I'm kind of blanking on all the great ones right now, but that was my thing, was like checking out records at Tower.
So for you on a personal level, how was it to go from listening to Seal records to mixing Seal?
It was pretty intense, man. There's been a couple of moments in my career working for artists. For example, Kiss. I hated Kiss as a child. I thought that I was an Iron Maiden and Black Sabbath kind of a kid. Right. And Kiss was for pussies, man. Kiss is for pussies. I hate that band, you know, whatever. And then, you know, I find myself working for them, you know, for 4 years or whatever. Yeah. So there's been a few moments of those, you know. Sure. Seal was one of them, definitely. I felt a lot of pressure to make him sound live like how I enjoyed his records sounding.
Is that a personal? Was that a personal thing, or because that was the directive? That was all personal. Got it.
Yeah. I'm my own worst enemy. I mean, I'll admit it. I'm a perfectionist, and it's what makes me good, but it also is destructive on many levels. You know, I can't tell you how many times I have been whatever, sitting at the console after a show, and as people are shuffling out past front of house, people are going, dude, that was awesome. Thank you so much. It was killer. And my inside voice is like screaming at them going, were we at the same fucking show? Like, what are you talking about? It was the worst fucking sounding show of all time. What do you mean? So I have a monster on the inside in regards to that, but I believe it's what makes me good. But it also is, it's damaging.
Yeah.
It's a hard way to live. Like I told you before, I in the thousands of shows that I've mixed in 27 years, I've really probably only walked away from 10, probably more like 5 shows.
Wow.
That
if we're really being honest with ourselves, Ken.
Yeah.
Maybe it's 3.
Maybe. I know. Seriously. I mean, as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, well, he's going to ask me which shows those were. And I can only think of one.
All right. What is it?
It's the Kiss Symphony in Melbourne, Australia. It was 60-piece Melbourne Symphony, a kids choir, an acoustic set. It was pretty awesome, Kiss playing along with a 60-piece orchestra that, David Beck's father. What's his name? David. Oh man,
Yeah,
I'm struggling. I can't remember. Anyway, he's an arranger. He arranged it and wrote all the parts. So it was, 60-piece Melbourne Symphony Orchestra at like 104 dB in a stadium. It was like, yes.
Wow.
It's pretty rad.
So wait, so of all the ones you can remember being good, there's only one, and the one that you can remember nailing had all of those fucking moving parts. And I'm looking like Jane's Addiction, man. They got 4 fucking people up there. You couldn't nail that one?
No.
Motley Crue? How hard is that?
No, but that's what I mean is that, there are when I'm talking about shows that I'm talking about I walk away from every single show and say, oh man, that show was so awesome except for the chorus and blah blah.
Right.
I missed that one cue. The guitar should have been just a little bit louder right there. So when I say that, nobody else around me,
of course,
thinks that show was horrible or that show was bad. Right. It's me walking away from it going, oh man, I could have made it, it could have been better in that one section or whatever. Right. So, that particular show that we're talking about, that Kiss show, was amazing because all the planets aligned, and it was, I was surrounded by amazing people doing amazing things. There's this guy named Angus Davidson, and he was, in a truck mixing all the string stuff and sending me stems. So, it wasn't just me. I had,
sure.
around me that were doing amazing things.
But of course, again, there's a lot of moving parts.
There was,
right?
Yeah, and this was before digital consoles too. It was two XL4s and a Heritage at front of house to do all those inputs, and that's with stems coming at me too.
Jesus,
so it was a lot of stuff.
How does the conversation differ, if it does differ, when you're meeting an artist for the first time, from, let's say, Motley Crue to Jay-Z, right? Or whoever it is, Lisa Marie Presley, Ted Nugent. You're meeting them for the first time to talk about what you're going to do, what your approach is going to be, what they would like your approach to be, what they, found, what they want to do new this time. Is it a new conversation each time, or do you have your sort of set thing and say, here's what I think? What do you do to prepare for those meetings?
It's different for every artist, and it is really, again, it comes back to having people skills and being able to literally, I am super good at reading people. Like, I can walk into a room of 20 people and immediately know at least 10 people in that room. I know exactly what's going on with those 10 people. In the first 2 sentences of what's coming out of some dude's mouth, I'm like, okay, I know what's up with that guy. Right. And so then the rest of the time is not spent on those people. The rest of the time is spent on the other people in the room trying to figure out, So I have the hardest time dealing with people for whatever reason, I can't read what their deal is. Those are often times where I fail or it doesn't work out. It really is, to me, it's like I can't teach kids that, right? Like it's so hard. It's like I walk into a room and I just know what to say to someone. But as far as preparation goes, obviously if I'm going to go meet with an artist for the first time, I better know their whole catalog and I better know it pretty well. Mm-hmm. If we're going to be discussing about what their needs and what their wants are, so there's a bit of study, before I go doing stuff. I'm about to go do this Iron Maiden thing. For the last 4 months, I've been listening to nothing but Iron Maiden, Yep. It's music that I know because it's music that I grew up with, but I don't know some of their newer catalog things. So I had to learn a lot of that. But also just a refresher of, what the stuff sounds like, you know?
Right.
These artists spend hours, days on end trying to make that record sound the way that they want it to sound. So who am I to say as a live sound engineer that it should sound any different than that unless an artist tells me that they want it different, Mm-hmm. An example of that is Jay-Z. I just did a Jay-Z tour where it was really cool. It was a total live band. So it was, drummer, a percussionist, 2 keyboard players, a bass player, a DJ, guitar player, full band. It was 120 inputs of stuff. But instead of it being playback and then a band, Jay-Z allowed me to do the opposite where it was band. It was like live rap with some with some tracks underneath it to support. But, and that would not have, I wouldn't have done it that way had he not directed me to do it that way. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it more because of it. But that's an example of a discussion that was had and then,
put in
whatever. But actually, it wasn't a discussion with Jay-Z. It was a discussion with the musical director. More and more these days, at least in the pop world, you don't have any interaction with pop stars as an engineer. Your connection to the music is usually through a musical director. If there's any sort of interaction with a pop star, it's usually very small.
Wow.
So my relationships at least in the pop world, rock world is you're dealing with band members,
Right.
But pop world is a musical director for the most part.
Interesting. You have spent a lot of time in your, coming up, watching people above you, learning from them, being their tech and whatnot. Tell me about the techs that work for you and how you work with them.
I love the guys that I get to work with. Man, I am surrounded by talented people. And like I said before, my success is not solely from me. It is absolutely from the people that I'm surrounded with. System engineer, especially nowadays with the technology that it is a whole different skill set that is required that I don't know anything about. I am one of those guys that's more like a studio guy that's like, here's my left and right. Let me give you that to the guy that's going to make it sound the same everywhere. Right. And that's kind of like his gig. And his skill set is much different than mine. He knows about networking and he knows about, pointing speakers in the right places to make the right seats sound right. I'm interested in those kind of things, but not as much, and so I really count on somebody else to be good at that. And so I've been blessed to work with some amazing system engineers. A guy named Vic Wagner. He's amazing.
That guy's huge. I met him with Scoville on the Petty Tour.
Yeah. He is, I would say, the best system engineer out there. But I've worked with some really close seconds. Chris Cookie Hoff, Brett Steck, Phil Kriz, Adam Stewart. All those guys are just badasses at what they do. And I mean, it's such a pleasure to be in somewhere. I feel like I have reached a certain level in my career where I'm like, okay, cool. I'm happy where I am. I'm doing large action, whatever. But part of what I'm happy about is because of that level, I'm getting to work with the people that are the best at what they do.
Right.
Yeah, that's lucky, man. That's a really lucky place to be.
What's your advice for a systems tech who obviously wants to mix one day? They want to make the leap, right? Like, I liken it to when I was in LA, I was editing and I was assistant editing a lot. And I had a guy that I worked for who was like, the advice he was given when he was starting out was, the minute you become comfortable as an assistant editor, that's when you leave. And that's when you strike out on your own to become an editor. So I'm wondering what the parallel is in your guys' world for a systems tech or an assistant, who comes in and they want to mix. What do you tell them? Same thing?
Kind of. What's weird about that is I got to say, in all those names that I just mentioned, there's only one guy, Adam Stewart, who is also an amazing. That's not true. Chris Cookie Hoff too. Both of those guys are mixers too, and amazing mixers. And they, it's almost like they took a step down to be my systems guy. I was like, wow, I was really blessed to have those guys work with me. But I'm telling you, my experiences with a lot of others, like Vic Wagner, does not want to be a mixer. Yeah. He is awesome at what he does, and he is happy doing what he's doing. And it's because I believe it's kind of a whole other personality type, it's a whole other thing. I know that there are some system engineers that want to be mixers, but the guys that I run into for the most part are guys that are happy in what they're doing, and they're not seeking my advice anyway on how to become a mixer.
Right. Right. I think in the Scoville episode I said this, but watching Vic work, I didn't know him at the time. So I went and hung out with Robert that day in Hartford at the Xfinity Center. He's like a cross between like Clark Kent and Spider-Man. Like, he was fucking everywhere.
Totally.
And happiest dude. And big, great looking guy, just like managed that place.
I used to say about him that he's the dude that wears the invisible lab coat, right? Like, he's the guy. He's like Beaker, right? He wears. He's totally like like nerdy about shit. Yeah. But he's wearing the Superman outfit, really. Yeah. Yeah. He's a great dude.
Yeah, we're gonna get Vic on the show.
You need to.
Let's get him on the show. You're gonna help me with that.
I will. I will totally help you with that. He's a great dude.
Good, man. Good. All right. So tell me a little bit about what was my next thing for you, man. Fucking waves.
Waves.
Fucking waves.
I love waves.
Tell me about waves. How'd that all start?
It started, I had used a little bit of their plugins initially prior to 2007, but mostly like studio projects that I was using, and I was aware of them, but wasn't, I was like, okay, whatever. And then the venue console showed up in Liveland, and so now it was this whole parallel universe between studio and live, where now we were using outboard gear was now becoming plugins. So I started in 2007. I started a Linkin Park tour with a bunch of other manufacturers' plugins, and I worked that way for the first 6 months of that tour, and was pretty happy with the result. I was like, wow, this is a pretty great sounding mix. I'm happy with what I got. And then I met this guy named Asher Patansky, who was a Waves guy. He's been around them forever. He's an Israeli guy. He's an amazing dude, producer, engineer kind of guy, but also a guy that worked a lot with Waves. Anyway, I met him and he called me up and he's like, hey, I'd like to send you some Waves plugins to see, give it a try. And I was like, yeah, no problem, whatever. Like a week later, I had replaced every single plugin in my session and had a significantly better result. Like I was like, what the hell have I been doing? Like,
wow.
Are you kidding me? Like, I mean, it was that big of a change. It really was. This isn't to slag other plugin manufacturers. There's guys that make amazing sounding plugins. Yeah. It just, at that particular time, it was a result that was like night and day for me. And so I decided I went out of my way to have a relationship with them. We liked each other, and I started saying, okay, well, let's do some, demo stuff and whatever. And that's been the relationship the last 10 years. That's awesome. And you teach for them as well? I do. I do demos mostly for them. So they will, just recently, we did a demo at Crass, which is a recording art school in Phoenix, I think. Anyway, where we go to the recording art school and all the people show up, for 3 hours to talk about stuff, talk about plugins. And it's basically just me with some tracks, pulling up plugins and saying, here's, check this out. You should try this on this. And it's really informal, but it's a lot of fun. That's awesome, man. That's very cool. And you go to stuff like NAMM where we met. I do, yeah. Shake a lot of hands, kiss babies. Yeah. Open plugins. Kiss hands. Kiss hands. Kiss hands. Shake babies. That's right, man. Shake babies. All right, you've been around the world like umpteen million times. What's your routine? How do you survive out there? Used to be a lot of alcohol. Not anymore. Were you a big partier out there? Yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 The boarding school kid popped back out, right? Totally. Well, I mean, let's be honest. It's one of the few jobs in the world. It isn't so much anymore. Now it's really a job. But before, in the mid 90s, it was at the tail end of the cocaine 80s. Right. And so it was. It's the only kind of job where it's accepted for you to be fucked up. And as long as you're doing your job, then nobody's going to give you shit about it. In fact, some of the jobs that I worked for, it was required for you to be messed up. You know? Right. I worked for Pantera as their monitor engineer, and they come around with a tray of fucking Blacktooths every single night, which is all the time. And it was like shot after shot after shot after shot. Right. And that was just accepted, and that's the way that it was. Now, I think people are a lot more concerned about safety and regulation and jobs and litigation and et cetera, that it has become definitely more of a job, and there is less of that. Yep. Although, Roadie Friday, days off, people are, hitting it hard still. Sure. I don't. I don't anymore, but was there a particular turning point for you personally that made you sort of slow it down, or was it just a gradual like, shit, I can't work on, I got to do my job? No, I mean, it definitely came to a head where I was absolute mess and was starting to lose gigs because I was a mess. And so it happened right at the beginning of the Linkin Park stuff. Chester, the guy that unfortunately is not with us any longer. He and I bonded in that he and I were both pretty messed up for a lot of years, and then we weren't. He was, yeah, I mean, he was a lot of it, like, you know, would talk about how life was so much better not being all messed up, even when I was still doing it. And kind of, you know, was instrumental in getting me to the place that I am today.
Awesome.
So, yeah. So now, you know, my days off look like going to the restaurant from the last time that I was there. That was amazing.
Right.
You know, or walking through the streets of Berlin in a part of town that I really like, because it's, you know, it's all places now for the most part that I've already been to at least once.
Yep.
And so I have some sort of handle on what's cool to go see or do.
Yep.
So I do that, and I oftentimes spend my days off away from the rest of the guys working. Just, you know, we're a family, and if you spend every single day with those people, it gets hard.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm a total loner and go away by myself
Sure.
on days off, but there are a lot of days that are like that.
Yeah, you got to get a little distance.
Sure.
During show day, are you a meditator? Do you like to do something before the show starts? You need to take a nap. Scoville was like, if I don't get my 30, 40-minute nap in, we're going to have some problems.
I am the guy that hangs out, and I like to work. I like to set up front of house. I like to run cable. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not like up on stage,
Right,
you know,
right.
stage patching, you know. But I do that, and so I end up hanging out at the gig a lot, and make myself available to try to help either opening acts or, you know, whatever. Try to hang out the most I can to be there and be present.
Nice.
So yeah,
I see you've got a wedding ring on.
I do.
I'm assuming you're still married.
I am.
How do you balance the relationship out on the road?
I think honestly, in my case, you know, I don't have any kids. We have dogs, which are our dog children, but no human children. And my wife has her own career of her own, and so we kind of lead two separate lives. And then when we happen to be home together, it's great. But then I leave again. So. That's all working right now. We'll see what happens when I eventually decide to retire. We might end up killing each other.
Yeah.
But, you know, I met my wife when I was already doing this. So I met her in 94. And so
Wow.
she knew the deal. She knew what she was signing up for, you know.
Yeah.
You know, is it hard? Yes. As I get older, it's more so. I find more like, man, I really don't want to go to the airport today.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it just seems to just work for us. You know, she does her thing, I do my thing.
Cool. How psyched are you to get on the Iron Maiden plane?
You know, I'm not going to be able to get to ride on the thing. It's funny.
Is that band only? Artists only?
No, they aren't doing it anymore. So I don't really know the reason why. But you know, I went for the interview to get interviewed by the managers of Iron Maiden, and I said, "Oh, I'm so stoked to be flying on the Iron Maiden plane." And all three managers looked at each other and didn't say anything, but looked at each other and went. And then one of them said, "Yeah, we're not doing that anymore."
Oh, wow.
So I don't know. I don't know what that means. I think some of it is that, you know, Bruce, the lead singer, was doing shows and then immediately going and flying a plane. And then, you know, so like the guy wasn't getting any sleep. And, you know, that's what I think it is. I don't honestly know.
Yep. Well, that would make sense if that were it. Obviously, I wouldn't want my lead singer flying after a fucking gig. Jesus. So you got to be psyched for those shows, though.
I am.
That's going to be fun.
They're all. It's April. We have rehearsals in Paris, and then shows May, June, July, August in Europe.
All Europe.
Yeah.
Cool. Favorite venues coming up?
Oh God, there aren't a whole lot of favorite ones of mine in Europe.
All right, favorite venues in the States.
There aren't favorite venues in the States either. No.
What, do you like to mix at home?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, let's be honest, right? So every single venue, most of the venues that I mix in are larger arenas to stadiums. Yep. These were venues that were not designed to have music in. Yep. They were designed to be sports venues. They were designed to get bigger and louder when you put people in there. So when you hang a speaker system in that particular situation, it's the worst case scenario in the world, right?
Yeah.
You're in a room where it's exciting the room at levels it wasn't designed to be excited at, with surfaces like whole walls of VIP shit that's fucking all glass. Yeah, I mean, these are places that are not, the best case scenario. Yeah. So the places that I like are the places that take that stuff into account, and either apply some sort of acoustical treatment for when there's concerts there, or when they built the place, they thought about the fact that 50% of their revenue was not going to be sports,
right?
So I would say any arena that's like been built in the last 5 years, maybe 7 years, those are starting to be the places to do shows in.
Cool.
But you go, I don't know. I can't think of it. You go to the San Diego Sports Arena. It's it's been there since '62. It's fucking horrible. It's like the worst place to mix in the world.
Yeah.
I used to hate, the Boston Garden.
Oh yeah.
Not the garden that it is now, but the old garden.
Right.
The whole building was tile, and it had pillars everywhere, and speaker technology sucked back then too. So it was horrible. And not only that, but it was like we do a show and then have to load out, and then the next day would be a circus and then load back in. So then you're pushing cases over elephant shit. It was the worst thing in the world.
Life in a rock band.
Yeah, that's it.
Ken, I don't want to keep you, man. I know you're a busy guy and you got some stuff to prepare for. I want to thank you for taking the time to do this.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's really nice.
How do people find you?
They can find me on Instagram. Tour Pooch is my Instagram. I quit doing Facebook because I couldn't stand the politics, so not on Facebook anymore. Plus, it was this weird, like, traveling down a rabbit hole every single day, hours of time. Oh, yeah. So anyway, no Facebook for me. So Tour Pooch. I do a lot of videos and that kind of stuff on Waves, so waves.com.
Okay. Awesome, man. This is a glimpse. We only got a snapshot here. So maybe we'll have to circle back to you at some point, but I didn't want to keep you.
I love that.
I wanted to be
that's great, man.
Wanted to be conscious of your time, man. You're a busy guy. So I thank you.
I appreciate it.
Be safe out there, and I'll catch up with you soon.
Cool. Thanks.
Okay, Ken Van Druten, thank you so much, my man, for being on the show. I very much appreciate your time. Folks, stay tuned next week for episode 93 with Carly Scoville. Robert Scoville's daughter is going to be on the show to talk to us about her time with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers 40th anniversary tour. Listen, in the meantime, you can follow us at Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube, all as Roadie Free Radio. Check out the website, roadiefreeradio.com. Send me a note because I want to hear from you. That's info@roadiefreeradio.com. Head over to the All Guitar Network and sign up for your free subscription while you can. And in the meantime, y'all be safe out there. No roadies, no rock and roll.